And now Work Matters with Julie Mann.
And welcome. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show that ponders the question, does work really matter? And if it does, why? It's really a great question to kind of spend some time around because we all spend a lot of time at work and we want to be sure that it matters and that, we're doing everything that we can to have that environment that we work in, bring that purpose, bring that value, bring what we want it to bring to our day. So excited to have on the show today, Ira Wolfe. We've been doing a series with Ira, and we're going to have two more segments yet. So I hope if you haven't listened to all of them that you pull those in because Ira is just an amazing thought leader. We've been talking about the future of work. We've been talking about change. And on this segment, we're going to talk about knowledge being power and really how that portion of power comes from data and from analytics and how we can incorporate that and how we have to incorporate more of that into a lot of what we do in the work world, especially in workspace, in recruiting, in talent acquisition. There's a lot of spaces that we can incorporate that knowledge to be our power. So, Ira, thanks for joining the show.
It's my pleasure, Julie. Thanks for having me.
Well, and so Ira, they talk about he's the Chief Googlization Officer and the president for his company, which is Success Performance Solutions. And so we've been talking about Googlization and, what that does from an organizational standpoint of view. But, all of that Googlization does lead to more information. And so, Ira, let's talk about, just kind of like that analytics. How is data shaping the way that we live, the way we work, and actually the way we play as well?
Well, it certainly is, and I appreciate that's a great question. So if we think about even our health and wellness, again, the science is based on, a lot of research, but it was based on data. And now it's much more relevant. But when we talk about technology and, all the sensors and your Fitbits and right. The monitoring devices and, even for diabetes, people, wear a sensor and now it automatically regulates your insulin and it tracks that. And,
right.
and if your levels go up or down and they go out of whack, it even notifies, the company or sends a warning out or notifies your doctor. So, we're collecting data all the time and people do it voluntarily. Everybody who has a Fitbit, everybody who has a watch, everybody who searches on Google. I mean, we're all transmitting this data. And in the past, it had been done, used primarily for marketing purposes or for basically economic performance. But now it's used to help us have a better quality life. And my focus is mostly like yours in the workplace and in HR. And HR has always collected a ton of data. Mm-hmm. I mean, from the beginning of an application, they got all your data. A lot of it wasn't relevant. Who cares where you're applying for a job on a screening, but they still collect your address. Right. And your last three employers and the last employer's phone numbers and all that sort of stuff. So they collect a ton of data, but they really weren't using it to either improve economic performance. It was sort of just a task that we needed to collect it. And now what they realize is a lot of the information that's collected can predict future performance. It can predict attrition. It can predict diversity, inclusion, and equity. Mm-hmm. So the move toward that has been rather slow in HR because even the technology, a lot of organizations weren't using technology.
Right.
They're still using spreadsheets, which is a form of technology, I guess. But a lot of people weren't even doing that. Probably the most common thing that HR was using in technology was payroll. Mm-hmm. They got paid online. And so, but when it came to things like recruiting and performance management and talent management, it just wasn't being done. It was still, there was almost this urge to, we need to keep the human in HR, the H in HR,
right.
By doing all these, by meeting with everybody one-on-one. But the problem is you couldn't scale it.
Right.
And exactly. the H was taken out of HR a long time ago because, HR did not have the best reputation of being the most humanizing, force in the business.
Hey.
Yeah.
I know.
Hey,
I've been living it. Yeah, no, I live it. I live it every day. I get you.
Yeah, just being honest. But what's happened is, and again, a lot of studies have come out. There's a lot of groups that came out over the last 10 or so years, and now a lot of the big guns like IBM got into it, and they were demonstrating that companies that focused on analytics were actually more human.
Right.
There was a more humanization, but they also had better economic performance.
Correct. Right.
And so that message was starting to get across. But it required a new way to do business. You couldn't just buy. So the challenge was, you're right. We're spending too much time entering data into spreadsheets and posting jobs, and so we need a better ATS. So they got the ATS, but then there's the applicant tracking system for those of
I was going to kick on that one. Right.
Yeah. So they got software, and again, even if they didn't buy their own software, they use ZipRecruiter, they use Indeed, and we can go up there and it distributes that, and they have a platform, and we don't have to get emails, we can just log in. The problem with that is they defaulted to technology to solve the problem. Technology is a tool. It's part of it automates a process, but it's not the process unless you allow it to be. And therefore, it did take the human out of it because they expected it to, if it doesn't if we have to write the emails or it doesn't automatically send an email out to keep in touch with the candidate or with the employee, that's marketing's job. We can't be expected to do that. Right. So technology became the savior, but then it also became the problem. And again, going back, we talked a lot about the pandemic. The pandemic sort of threw all this out in the air and realized how backwards and out of date some of these processes really were. So going back to the data, though, is one of the side benefits that most people didn't use, and we have a lot of clients that use an ATS. We actually resell an ATS as well. No one runs the reports.
Right.
No one looks at the data. It's like, well, we're just not getting enough applications. How do you know that? Well, we pulled out our report, and our bosses and our hiring managers are really upset. We're not getting enough quality applications. Well, how many people? So this is a common question, and I don't talk about this a whole lot in the book, but I have since then because I realize it's a huge problem. How many people started your application but didn't finish it? Exactly.
It's your funnel. It's the reach. Well, for you, it's the reach funnel, but the funnel is huge.
Yeah. So, last year I spoke at 27 conferences. And every conference I would say, how many people know how many candidates started an application but didn't finish it?
Right. And what's the conversion rate as you go down and through the tunnel? Because it's basic math, right? I know I need to have 700 people put in an application to be able to work them through the funnel to get the one hire. So therefore, every time I need one hire, I need to have 700 people in the funnel, and therefore, how many marketing clicks does it take to get the 700 in the funnel? I mean,
So
you don't always like to hear that, right? Because again, that sounds pretty numerical for.
And I give them credit. JobVite used to have one of the best studies, and I don't know if they continue to do this or not. But every year they would track how many, to get one person, how many job offers did you have to extend? And it was pretty consistent. It was usually like 1.1 job offers. Because people drop out for different reasons. But in order to get those, you needed 6 quality interviews, and everybody would laugh to have 6 quality interviews. In order to have 6 quality interviews, you needed to have 50 applications. And, again, that sounds like a small number, but in many companies, many struggled to get that, especially skilled labor positions.
Right.
They have 50 quality 50 applications. But here's where it all fell apart. So people tracked that pretty well. They knew how many people were interviewed, but what they didn't know is, going back to the start, how many people started an application but didn't finish it? They had no idea.
Right.
And in the studies that we did and in some of the research, the average, this is the average, is 50%. That 50% of people, 100 people start an application, 50% complete it. So what happened to those 50 Why did why didn't they complete it? And it just took too long.
Right.
They didn't have mobile access. It wasn't mobile ready. There were a lot of reasons, and we can dive into that if we want. But prior to that, so the next stat was, did enough people actually see your ad that you're
Right.
listing? Did enough people know?
Right.
And said, well, we can check on Indeed. Well, that's just one source. What about social media?
Right.
What about the other job boards? What about from your own career website? So going down that funnel, people didn't know how many people viewed it, how many people knew about it. Out of that, how many people clicked to apply? Out of how many people clicked to apply, how many people actually finished the application?
Right.
And on a handful of clients that we had, and a couple were in healthcare, which is another organization, industry that was notoriously bad at keeping up with technology and HR. There was a 90% abandonment rate, meaning 9 out of 10 people who said, yeah, I'm interested in applying for a job at your organizations, but I'm not filling out this crazy application.
Right.
It's 5 pages. It's a PDF that I got to download.
Right.
I can't do it on my smartphone. And the answer from employers was, well, if they're not willing to take 15 minutes to fill out an application, I don't want them. And my answer was, how's that working out for you?
Exactly. How's the top of your funnel looking? I read something that said that from an application standpoint of view, that your drop-off rate is after 7 clicks. And think about that. Anybody who's listening in who's trying to hire, think about, can someone let you know that they're interested in working for your company in 7 clicks? And so, a lot of that successful funnel filling happens in at least having some form. I hear that argument all the time as well. Well, if they don't want to take the 15 minutes, but give them the 7-click opportunity to be able to get them into the funnel and understand and at least get interest, right?
Yeah, the 7 clicks is actually, that's pretty low, and that's probably from e-commerce things, so there may be a little bit difference in the stat. But it's about 20, basically it was 20 fields.
Okay.
Now it depends.
Okay.
These 20 clicks could be your name.
Right.
I get away with it with Ira Wolfe.
Well, Julie Mann's pretty easy too. So yeah.
Yeah. But when you think about it, you're asking for somebody to invest the time, and here's the other problem: is people were not willing to invest even those 7 clicks or 20 clicks, whatever it might be, because HR's black hole.
Right. They don't hear back from anybody, so why bother? Right.
So I'm willing to invest 15 minutes, but the chances of that's 15 minutes I'll never get back because I'm probably never going to hear from that company.
Right.
So the rule, these weren't rule of thumbs, these were from stats, from data.
Right.
20 fields, you have a 50% dropout rate.
Wow.
So the reality is you think about it. If I ask for a first name and a last name, I ask for a street address, I ask for city, state, zip code, I ask for a phone number and email address, that's 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you still don't know anything about the person, right?
Right. So out of that question, out of those 10 fields, and I go through this exercise all the time. Out of those 10 fields, how many of those fields did you absolutely need to qualify somebody? Right. And the answer is 0. Now, you do need a way to contact them, so you need a phone number or an email. But now you're introducing bias because if there's sometimes their email is their name, so you give that away. If the first question you ask them is the first name and the last name, you introduce conscious bias into the equation without even knowing if they're qualified. Mm-hmm. So my rule of thumb is going back to your 5 clicks. I don't know if it's 5 clicks, but it's 5 questions. Right. Is identify the 5 things, the 5 criteria that if they answer no to any one of those, you don't need the rest of the information.
A knockout. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So do they have to be 18? Do they have to be licensed in your state? Do they have to have reliable transportation? Do they have to have 5 years experience? Which is also a joke because, how do they determine the 5 years experience? Right. Do they have to have a degree? What are the 5 skills or the 5 questions that they absolutely have? And if they answer no to any one of those, you don't even have to go further than that. Right. Because once you do that, now you've had immediate engagement. So you've done that, and you get to say, hey, you're qualified, whether that's by a chat or whether by a phone call, by an email, whatever it is. You've now had engagement, which 90% of companies don't have until after they submit a 20-page application.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and we wonder, I know you talk about, we need to recruit better and, things that are
Smarter.
It's better.
Recruit
Smarter.
smarter.
Right. And why is that hiring process a little bit upside down? And, and those are all of those things. And those are important to kind of go back to where we started. Knowledge is power, right? And by harnessing that knowledge and getting the knowledge that you need in that process in particular, it really does help the organization use that knowledge to create that power. And in the work world and in the HR space, in so many places I've been, they don't know that we need technology, and you need that technology. You need the people analytics, because that's how we need to think forward on all of this stuff. So, all right, Ira, we are going to close this segment. Everyone, we're going to do one more with Ira Wolfe, so please join us back. Ira, thank you so much. And for everybody who's listening, as you know, let's impact today. Let's transform tomorrow. And until next time, let's make work matter.